Well, hello friends and neighbors. John, your whiskey neighbor here, and welcome again to my deck. It is an absolutely gorgeous fall day up here in the Edmonton, Alberta region. And as I said last time, I want to move into some 15-year-olds that I have open. And it makes sense that I would start with this bottle. We'll be talking about the Glenfiddich 15-year-old release. As I said in the opener, we'll be looking at Glenfiddich 15-year-old. Thanks for staying with me through the break. So if you're not familiar with, well, I could say Glenfiddich, then welcome to Scotch. But Glenfiddich is obviously a bottle that you're going to find, like a distillery, you're going to find a bottle of on any bar in the whole planet. I know if I go over to a place that I haven't been a friend's place and they know I like Scotch, oh, come on over, and in the cabinet, invariably, there's probably a bottle of Glenfiddich 12. But Glenfiddich 15, while common, is maybe not in as many households. So I wanted to talk about just, in general, I've only got a few 15-year-olds, but, you know, talk a little bit about, I mean, specifically the whiskey. That's why you tuned in. But then also a little bit about, you know, when you go from 12 to 15, what does that look like in most distilleries, most core ranges? So this bottle, you know, it's bottled at 40%. Of course, I'm in Canada, so they don't have to say, but, you know, I feel like, you know, there must be some coloring and definitely chill filtered. So it's not going to check those boxes for us whiskey geeks. But it's got some interesting things behind it. One, you know, from the typical Glenfiddich 12, you know, it's got mostly ex-bourbon aging. The whiskey's been mostly an ex-bourbon, but some ex-sherry. And some new wood is what I've read, which I think is kind of, well, it's right on here. And some new oak casks, so that's cool. So there's 3 different cask styles. I don't know the percentages. I'll just talk about the flavors and maybe I'll connect that to casks. But I think what really makes this bottle stand out for me is that it is the Solera Reserve. So the concept of a Solera bottling, as I understand it, is they have a big oak tub where they, I don't know when they started it, and I should have done that research, but at some point, you know, they emptied their casks into this tub, drained half of it, bottled it for their 15-year-old, right? And then next year, they fill it back up, and it just fills up, drain half, maybe it's not half, drain some of it, much of it, bottle that as 15-year-old. Next year, put their 15-year-old in the tub, fill it up, drain it, bottle as 15-year-old. So what happens over time, I think, is you actually get older whiskey mixed with the 15-year-old. Of course, you know, bottling regulations, if you're going to put an age stamp, you have to indicate the youngest whiskey in here. And so the youngest is always 15. But I think it will, the process is exciting to me. And I haven't had enough Solera releases to tell you what I think of how that is different from just aging it longer and blending with older stocks. But I really like the concept. I think it's pretty cool. So let's talk a bit about the whiskey itself. You know, again, if you're new, it's a single malt Scotch, single from one distillery, malt, meaning it's all barley. And of course it's Scotch, so it's from Scotland. And Glenfiddich is in the Speyside region. And so they could label it as Speyside or Highland, but I believe they do neither. Just a second, my cat's about to jump in the camera. All right, well, let's talk a bit about the oak casking in here and a little bit about the Solera process, as I understand it. I'm not intimately familiar with it, but let's talk a bit about the whiskey itself. See what we smell, see what we taste. I love this nose. If I'm looking for lots of fruit, a rich, deep sweetness, yeah, every time I go back in, the first thing that comes out is that deep, juicy raisin. What would be deeper than that? Like a light prune or an apricot or a fig, right? So the fruits to me are those rich, deep fruits. But there's still some orchard fruits in there, some crisp fruits. Stay with this nose and you're going to get caramel, light vanilla. There's something tart. It doesn't take me to lemon though. It just stays as tart, like tart fruit. I don't know how to describe that right now, but just a little bit of soured fruit. Yeah. If I stay in the nose that long and get into that sourness, it starts to kind of back me off because at first it's that deep, pithy, richer sweetness that really comes out first. See how it tastes. Sláinte. Up front, again, that kind of sweet fruit nature. Very quickly for me though, get into some caramel, get into some oak, light oak, deeper oak, little bit of spice, but not much. The spices are kind of a light cinnamon. Not as fruity in the palate as the nose. The nose, I really thought we were going to go somewhere with that. It kind of comes back and stays a little bit more towards that light vanilla and caramel. Yep, that interplay between wood, caramel, definitely fruit. It's just not as bright, light, rich, sweet that the nose is. So there's kind of a bit of a contrast between the nose and the palate. Right at the end, yeah, the beginning of the finish, you do get a little bit of spice that picks up on the tongue, which I like. A little bit of oak spice, cask spice. In the palate, it's a little bit thinner again than the nose. The nose is very rich and enveloping, and you think, oh, it's going to be so coating. I don't find it very coating in the mouth. I find it a little bit thin. But the finish is pleasant. For me, it doesn't go too astringent. It stays pretty close to, you know, that edges of wood and spice that tend to stick around in finishes. And moving just a hint into, I don't want to say smoke, but what do you take when you, like maybe an edge, just an edge of leather. It's not leathery, but the, you know, the edge of the rind of a fruit, or the edge of the barrel, or the edge of the spice, right? So it gets a little bit of that on the end. I like this, actually. And in my area, it's really quite affordable. So let's first just talk, for me, the star value of this bottle is quite good. For me, it's a 4-star. I like it. I know I don't give out enough 4 stars, but I like the bottle. Now I want to taste it against the 12, and then maybe talk a bit about 12 and 15-year-olds, if I may. So let's clear the palate a little bit. So take a look at the 12-year-old Glenfiddich. Obviously, probably the most available whiskey, single malt, anyways, in the world. Nose for me is much lighter, orchard fruits, not whatever that pithy, deeper fruits. So, you know, pear, apple, but still quite bright. And here I almost get a bit of a lemon zest instead of just a tartness. After that one, though, it's tough to get much more. Let's see how it tastes today. Today, very clean and crisp. Lighter fruits also back off in the palate now that I'm thinking about it, but light, crisp, vanillas more than toffee caramels for me. Very gentle, very like almost refreshing. Just a nice, light, easy across the palate. Little bit of wood in there, a little bit of things to think about right at the end. Better give it another taste. Yeah, and as often is the case, you know, second sip in, you can get some of that. I don't want to call them secondary flavors, but flavors just behind that fruit. But really, vanilla, edge of spice, hint of wood, but clean, crisp orchard fruits really stands out for me for Glenfiddich, which for me is a 3.5, 3.75 kind of start. Going back to the 15-year-old, surprisingly deeper and rich nose. Really sways into that caramel. just in contrast to this, and a little bit more spice. So I'm comfortable with that. For me, for my palate, I actually do like the 15-year-old better. So comments a bit about moving up a core range from 12, 15, 18, 21, and so on. I constantly, from new drinkers, like, friends, just people that aren't whiskey buffs like me, ask about the value of moving up in the core range. And I would have to say, just in general, if I'm making a big statement, just in general, you tend to experience at least a little bit broader range of flavors. And you won't always like the way it might move. It's not uncommon. What's a distillery for me like that? Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue, and I'm not going to... Glenfarclas. I like the 12. I like the 17. There's something about their 15-year-old that actually puts me right off. It's on one of my very small list of, let's not buy that again. I might have had a bad bottle. But I just wanted to say that just because there might be some other flavors to consider doesn't mean that you're going to love it more. There are quite a few younger whiskeys that are a favorite of mine compared to the older whiskeys. But, distilleries know what they're doing in the sense that when you look across a core range and you see, price increases, is it really worth it? Well, that is such a hard thing to say. Now, I'm at a place in my whiskey journey where I was just talking to another store owner, when you've got a deep cabinet, I'm never in pressure to purchase. So for me, all the 15-year-olds that I have, I purchased in my area for about 55 Canadian, which is fantastic. That's the regular price for the Glenfiddich 12, right? This one I've been able to get around 35 to 39. But this one, I got for $55. And all of the 15s that I have are right around that 55, 57 range. And really, I would suggest that if you see a 15-year-old on sale or an 18-year-old on sale and you haven't tried them before, they're worth experiencing for what I was suggesting. Not that you're going to love them more. I can't say that because it's your palate. And there's, when I look at critical ratings, actually the Glenfiddich 15, I think critically doesn't excite the majority of critics out there the way I like it. But it does move into flavor profiles that I appreciate. But should you buy it? I think if you haven't tried it, I think it should be on the list. I think it actually offers a unique direction for Glenfiddich, and I appreciate it. I think I've rambled too much about the back and forth, but if you hear anything, obviously trust your palate, enjoy what you like, but don't be afraid to try a little bit expensive, like not expensive, but I mean farther up a range whiskey once in a while to see if it's something that's going to excite you. Thanks for joining me. This is an amazing day. You guys take care.